Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. This is kind of an interesting show today, not just because that 4 out of the 5 people sitting on this set have received a degree from UNO and one from Bellevue College, but because we're talking about something that I can't smile at, I can't really laugh at. It is called identity theft. It is an exploding crime in our country, and the Federal Trade Commission reports that it is the largest type of crime reported to them. In fact, 43% of the complaints to the FTC involve identity theft. And you and I are targets. We're in the crosshairs. Our guests this week are Eva John Sperling. She is the postmaster of Omaha, the Omaha Post Office. And also with us is Marcia Puccioni-Jones, and she is president of the Better Business Bureau in Omaha. And these people get lots of complaints, and so do the people that you'll hear from my other side. And they're not the opposing side, because they're all on the same team here. Mike Millay is state president of AARP, and knows well what one of the most vulnerable populations is to identity theft and related kinds of frauds. And someone who's been in the trenches trying to find these not so nice people that perpetrators, as they say, the perps, is Pam Durkee. She is with the U.S. Postal Service, Postal Inspection Service. I have an extra. You're
Yes.
USPS, and they're USPIS. So, but they're federal officials, and we have people that are very trained in this. I'm going to start with Marcia, because the Better Business Bureau is kind of a hallmark agency for getting complaints from people who don't really know who else to turn to, because they don't know how the crime works. They just know they're a victim. Right. This is always been a problem, but it is exploding.
That's correct. We started hearing from people about 5 years ago when I first started, and every once in a while. So we started getting the calls, but right now, every week, we're getting calls from someone who gave out their social security number and they're asking us, well, do you know who I talked to? Or after the fact, after they're pretty certain that they're a victim, they want to know what they need to do now and what kind of steps that they can take.
And we'll talk about some of the steps that they can take, but Eva John, the internet and the fluidity of our postal service. The good news is that we have a very good postal service, no matter what people say. It works really well, and banks and credit card companies use it because it does work. It reaches people. Mm-hmm. But there's not a bad side, but one of the unintended consequences is that people can get your information by what you throw out that you got in the mail, or maybe even what you didn't even get out of your post office box yet.
Absolutely. Both of those areas, when the mail comes in to your box, if your box is a post office box, you're pretty safe, because the only people who have access to that are people who have a combination or a key. And you must give them that. We don't. If it's a home box that is not a locked cluster box, then you need to get your mail out of it as quickly as you can.
But there are literally millions and millions of pieces of information that make you vulnerable, that come through the U.S. mail. It doesn't make them inherently bad, but that's the way our commerce system works. And Pam was telling me that you have to watch what you throw out. In fact, I heard on Today's show today that dumpster divers are one of the famous group of people that find information that they sell or use.
Yeah, that's true. The trash, when you dispose of items at home, we encourage people to purchase shredders to try to shred and destroy their valuable financial information. It's amazing what a person can find out about you by going through your trash, whether it's the trash you set on the curb, or if they subsequently get into a dumpster and start going through trash and finding out all sorts of things. They know what you like to buy. The grocery store receipts tell you where you shop, what you like to buy at the grocery store.
And that might target you as someone who has good credit and who has fluid credit, and that if you keep diving, you're going to find some information that you can actually steal their credit or their identity.
That's exactly right, especially the good credit and the perhaps the people who are more financially well off. They tend to dispose of a lot more items, such as lots of stock reports, mutual funds that they owned, and if people get an idea that this individual has a lot of money, they could be targeted. And the thing I try to tell people is anyone can be a victim. You don't have to be uneducated or wealthy, or it doesn't matter if you're poor. Anyone can be targeted. Even those of us who are very educated and very cautious, we can still fall victim to it. And in fact, law enforcement agents have fallen victim to identity theft.
I think our Omaha police chief has admitted publicly that he had his, I mean, it wasn't anything he necessarily did, but I mean, you don't have to do anything wrong. There are plenty of things you can inadvertently do. Mike, I think that, and I think, you know, Pam and Marcia particularly, who work with people and hear the complaints, know that the people that you kind of represent as state president of AARP are, in a sense, one of the most vulnerable groups. Not to say they're out there vulnerable, but I mean, they're so trusting because that's the era they were brought up in.
Well, not only that, but the fact of the matter is that they're vulnerable in a number of ways. It's easy to call somebody that doesn't get a phone call very often and get them to elicit information that if they were more wary, they wouldn't give you that information. And another thing is, very often the elderly people probably have better incomes than most people in the general population.
Or have some say that they can get to.
Right, and they very often own their own home free and clear, and they have a regular income, and these people are extremely vulnerable because in some cases they want to associate with people outside, and they're very willing to communicate. They talk, and a lot of times they give things away without intending to.
Right, and again, it's that maybe a little bit of the era that they came from. They didn't have to be in a fight or flight mode all the time. That they were potentially a victim or someone was going to attack them, not physically, but certainly attack their good name and their credit. Let's go through some of the. I mean, everybody's got a war story or 10 or 100, but let's go through some of the things that. Let's talk about your mailbox. I get these checks all the time from my credit card companies saying, we want to make your dream vacation come true. We want to make your Christmas easier. And I rip them into little shreds, but even then I'm afraid they aren't little enough. That's one thing that comes into your mailbox. Marcia, what else comes into your mailbox? And we won't just pick on mailboxes, even.
That's fine.
Your pre-approved credit card offers. Those, you know, I was getting 5 a week in my mailbox, and I'm sure others were. And the horror stories that we hear in our office is they would just throw them out in total. So anyone that would going through the trash would be able to actually pull them out and fill out that particular pre-approved application.
And they can change the address.
Oh, sure.
They can say, because things get forwarded that are addressed to you, not just kind of random mail.
Well, and they have no way of verifying your signature at that point. So whatever signature is on there is a signature that all of a sudden is sent to the credit card company. So you're just giving them something that free and clear that they can all of a sudden now use to access and become you in a certain way.
And Eva Jones was saying, get to your mailbox as soon as possible. There's a reason for that.
Exactly.
I mean, there are working neighborhoods where you could literally, you know, on a nice day, wander down the street with a friendly-looking dog and stop at a few mailboxes and just reach in and pull that kind of stuff out. That can literally keep you from buying a house or a car because you suddenly find out your credit is ripped.
We've heard cases where they use children because their hands were small, you know, to be able to get into smaller boxes. So everybody has to be aware of this because everyone's a potential target, and it's happening around us here, not just on either coast, but it's here, and we've got to protect ourselves.
Eva John.
We have people who actually follow the carriers on occasion, and they'll be a block behind the carrier, and as the carrier drives on mounted routes in particular, as the carrier drives down the street on a mounted route, someone will follow along behind, looking
What's a
through the
mounted
boxes.
route? I keep thinking of a horse.
Well, at one time it was. A mounted route is where the boxes face the curb, and the carrier drives down the street.
Just drives down the right side of the street and
services the box from the vehicle.
I mean, they're that bold.
Yes, they are.
Wow.
Yes.
Mike, what is one of the things you've heard the most from folks?
It's interesting about things like that. One of them is having something stolen from you. By something stolen, I'm talking about billfold. Another thing that comes in the mail is that Pam mentioned is stock reports. If a transfer is made, you get a notification in the mail. And but the theft of personal property is something that very often can result in identity theft. People carry their social security number, they carry their driver's license, they carry any other professional license in their billfold, and someone steals the billfold, the money may be lost, but if somebody knows how to sign your name to a check in exactly or very similar way to the way you do, that's very serious.
Plus, I have been on the internet. I have done research on the internet as a journalist, and what you can do with the crown jewel of all things, which is social security number, is, it was kind of scary to me. I was trying to find out something about a person that wasn't very nice, that I thought was, and I was doing a report. And this was even several years ago. And what I could find, I don't even want to know what I could find now. Pam, what's another thing where people are just not aware that someone's watching to grab information?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that they get phone calls at home in the evening. One thing that's particularly concerning for us that we've had instances happen, they'll somehow call posing as though they're with a corporation or company, and they have found out that you in fact did subscribe to an internet service or you subscribe to a magazine subscription, and they want you to verify passwords on the phone. And they're not telling you what the password is. They want you to verify it so they can activate your internet service or activate or initiate your new magazine subscription. And that's very concerning because once you give a password out or two, you've just opened the door to becoming completely vulnerable to all of your financial accounts, because people, as much as we tell them to use different passwords, all of us don't like to remember 4, 5, 6, and 7 passwords.
I tried it. It just doesn't work for me.
We all do. We all tend to hang on to one or two of them for a variety of things that we use, whether it's our debit card or our Visa card or access to our bank account. We all tend to gravitate towards that same password or two, and then once you give that out, you're really, really in a bind, and you're going to be financially, you're going to feel a loss. You're going to have losses occur on your financial accounts, such as your credit cards and your debit cards. So I would tell people, don't ever give out a password to somebody that calls you on the phone. Even if you did subscribe to that magazine or that internet service and what they're saying is true, don't give it out. Let them tell you what you told them when you first signed up.
Well, I'm going to tell everybody else what a stupid thing I did. And this is what's scary. I kind of know you're not supposed to do this, but this was slick. This was slick. Someone called and said that my husband had signed on the internet and wanted to look at lower mortgage rates in these financial times. And they gave me what we paid for our house, how much we owed, what our down payment was, my husband's email address, and other information about our house and the value and some comparable properties. And since my husband and I had talked about doing this, I believed that he did, because he works on the internet and he signed on. And they said, do we have the permission to, use your credit? And we have your husband's social security number. Now, could you give us? And I just blurted it out because I felt that this was all really viable information, and I knew my husband might have done this. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I knew. Now, it was a legitimate company, we did find out, but they suckered me good. Marcia, I know, I feel bad.
No,
bad.
don't feel bad.
Bad.
You're one of our callers because that's what we hear. And the good news is you were dealing with a legitimate company, though even then, a legitimate company, all it takes is 1 or 2 rogue employees and bingo, you've got a problem. So the bad news is you called immediately to find out at least that
We
it
did
was...
call back. My husband called back enraged because he'd never signed on. They got
Right.
it. They bought that information from
Right.
a mortgage company or something.
Well, and there's a whole other privacy issue that
Right.
we can talk about later, but because companies do share information with that. But the fact is, the person sounded authoritative, and this happens all the time. Authoritative, they were friendly, and all of a sudden you start divulging information without even thinking.
Yeah, and the red light went on as soon as those numbers.
Right,
spewed
but they're
forward.
gone.
Yeah,
Those numbers are gone. If they had been...
And what I did was I called the state attorney general's office in Nebraska, and they immediately told me 4 very important things. Experian. Now, what are all the names of the credit agencies?
Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax.
And Equifax, and they gave you the numbers, and they also gave me the number of the Social Security Administration to report that it's possible that that number could have been hoodwinked.
Right.
And this is an important thing I'm finding out. So if and you can find out from and you're seeing on your screen under my guest's name occasionally a website so that you can look for information.
It's extremely important to notify local law enforcement
Yes.
first. The reason that it's important is because that is considered to be absolute evidence that you were prudent, because what you did was you reported that where you could. Then go to the 3 national agencies and report it
So
there.
in other words, you're sort of showing due diligence that I might have done this and I might have done it, inadvertently or whatever, but that I am showing that I'm a responsible person. But let me ask this. Is there something, because this is happening so much and will continue to explode, if it's exploding now, how as private citizens can we, besides protecting ourselves as a group, and I know Congressman Lee Terry has been concerned about this too, but why do we have to say to our lender, for instance, if it's the lender that gave out our information, I want you to assume that you cannot give out my information. I don't have to find some magical form somewhere and be able to understand the Greek that it's written in to say, no, I don't. And right now, the onus is all on us with every account that we have to tell these commercial agents, and I'm not anti-bank, anti-capitalism, but why does the onus have to be on us? Why can't there be a law that says you don't give anything out unless you get permission to give it out? Okay, maybe I'm not a very nice person.
No. In fact, I think that's, from what I'm hearing, that's one of the, what would be an extreme regulation, that there are some congressmen that are talking about that particular
Or at least
end
make
of it.
all the forms read the same way and not some different legalese.
Yes.
I wonder if that is extreme, really, and I'll tell you why I wonder. If my doctor gives out information about me, it's considered to be a professional breach. I don't see any reason why my stockbroker or my banker can't be considered professional, because I certainly consider them professional, or I wouldn't want to do business
Well,
with
you
them.
should have listened to the debate in Congress, how they feel that the movement of commerce is much more important than your privacy, but that's a whole different issue.
Yes, exactly.
The bottom line, the reason I ask about that isn't to get in some theoretical or philosophical brouhaha, but the reason I do ask that is that these are people doing commerce and maybe doing some due diligence about asking you your permission. But that's so much of the information, and then it gets taken by somebody that's bad, or some rogue employee, it's someone they've sold it to. What you're doing is increasing the permutations and combinations of how you can get your financial life stolen.
Right.
Well, the companies sell everything.
Yeah.
Everyone sells everything, whether it's a bank or a credit card. I don't just work identity theft, mail fraud. You can sell the demographics on somebody. I need a list of people who make $50,000 or more a year, who are widowed, who are 65 years and older, and who have stock investments of $30,000 or more. A list company will provide me with that list.
I don't even mind being a demographic, but I do mind that they knew that someone sold our information about literally,
They may not have necessarily sold
Not
it.
necessarily.
or it was stolen.
Well, and not
Not-
even
not even
that.
that.
Not even that. There is.
This gets scarier.
Well,
There's good
the
agreements.
banks, for example, have information, and the act that was passed in 2001, the Privacy Act of what you could share, indicated it pertained to banks and financial institutions, but they could share that information with what are known as affiliated partners. So they didn't have to sell it, they didn't have to steal it. They willingly, perhaps, shared that information because the mortgage company may be
With
considered
their brothers in their
an
corporation.
That's right, an
or
affiliated
sisters.
partner.
Tax records include
right.
a lot of the kind
Yeah.
of information you're talking about. That's a peculiarity because of the what do you call it? You put money in you send money to your lender, and they hold it to pay your taxes.
Right, right.
Those things contain a lot of information that you wouldn't believe. And there's one other little thing that hasn't been mentioned yet. There's a thriving industry now. For about $50 a year, you can buy insurance against identity theft.
Oh no. Well, we can't put the genie back in the bottle, which is the information explosion. I mean that's something we're going to grapple with. But now let's talk about how to be on the offensive. Okay, don't be a Carol Schrader and even assume that your husband filled out some application on the internet. Pam, what else can I do to be on the offensive? Shredder, mention that.
Shredder, one of the best things to do for everybody, but it takes a little bit of time and a little bit more effort than just shredding at home, is I strongly encourage people to order their credit reports once a year, and I'll tell you why I do that. You may take every precaution in the world, but we do have those dishonest employees within different companies who take orders, take your credit card when you order something out of the catalog, take your credit card number when you check in a hotel, and there are those occasions where even employees who have rightful access to that information, when you're making a transaction, they choose to be dishonest at some time and they decide that after Carol Schrader checks in this hotel that they're going to take that credit card number home with them and do something else with it. And that does happen, and you could take every preventative measure in the world and you will still be a potential victim to this.
So the sooner you know that your credit's been ink blotted, you know, and somebody spilled the ink that'll turn your life into a nightmare all over it, you know, like you go to buy a house. And you were telling me that Will Smith,
Yes.
the actor that we all know,
He went to purchase a home, and during the credit checks for the new purchase, he realized that somebody had taken a social security number, utilized it to obtain some financial devices such as credit cards, and this individual had taken Will Smith's identity along with several other, and he was charged in federal court of up to $64,000 that he took from various people for identity
and the
theft.
good news is that they actually caught that person.
Yep, they caught
I'm
him.
sure a lot just go because of the volume, and you're an investigator. You know that you have a finite number of hours, and that some of these cases take, you know, one case that involves one or two people, not 30,000 people. I think
Right.
there was a case last year, can take an incredible amount of footwork and handwork and.
Lots of time. Subpoenaing bank records, following the bank trail, following the mailboxes trail. Some of these people are very sophisticated. They move around a lot. If the credit card was sent to A Street, by the time you found out that it went to A Street, you go to A Street, he's gone and he's moved to B Street. And you're following until you're able to identify who the real perpetrators are. And it takes a long time on certain cases.
And what would you say? Best offensive actions?
Well, I would say, because many years ago I had my purse stolen, is not to carry your Social Security card. Don't carry any of that
Why
stuff
would
with
even
you.
anybody carry their Social Security card?
Well,
I'm just curious, in this day and age where we use that number
Well,
so much.
why would they?
For
Because
everything.
they're trying to carry you here. Carry your Social Security card with you. Carry your credit cards
And
with
that's
you.
from an era gone by too. For some of our seniors, is that was almost a badge of honor that you were a working person. You had a Social Security card, and I know my grandma carried it everywhere she went.
The Social Security card has always caused trouble as identification. As a matter of fact, there were 26,000 people had the same Social Security card because they bought a billfold and there was a facsimile Social Security in it, and they thought that was their number. There were 26,000 people using the same number.
Oh, you mean they bought? What was that thing that they put when you buy a
Right.
billfold? Oh my gosh! So, but there's no reason to really carry it,
No.
and most people have it committed to memory, or can, if they're dealing with the bank.
If you apply for a job, you must have the original. That is the law.
That's a law, but not very many. I've never been checked.
Well, you can bring it to the job, have it,
And then
use
take
it,
it
and
home.
then take it home and put it in a secure site. Don't carry all the credit cards that you have with you. Carry just what you think you'll need for
You know, a
that
lot
day.
of young people do that. I think that,
Oh, I
you know,
know.
when they first get credit, and they might only have 3 credit cards, not like 100, although some have 100, but it's kind of a badge of honor. But that's really probably not a good idea.
No, my daughter has a credit card, and I told her put it away. I mean, she liked carrying it, just the fact that she had one.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
badge of
my
honor.
daughter, I'm thinking, come on,
Yeah,
learn from
the
me,
better
please.
business.
So, finally I got it away from her.
Eva John, offensive. Let's protect ourselves if we can.
Actually, one of the things that I encourage people to do is not to carry a purse. Learn to make things into smaller amounts that you can carry in a pocket, and it's much safer.
You know, I tend to do that, or I carry a fanny pack, where they would have to literally accost me to get
And
it
make
out.
a copy of what little you do carry. Make a copy of it front and back and keep it at home, because if you lose your billfold in the evening, your bank is closed, your Visa company is closed. Usually there's a 24-hour 1-800 number on that card. And if you copy the card and you have copies of everything you carry, you can immediately call and tell them it's been stolen or lost.
Now, do you see this as not really getting any better just because of the sheer opportunities that are out there? I mean, I don't want to paint a dismal picture, but I guess I want to emphasize that the chances of this happening to you increase every day.
From our perspective at the Better Business Bureau, we get calls every week. That wasn't the case, even 3 years ago. The internet has really assisted the identity thief in this manner, because they can mine for information on the internet as well. So the landscape has changed tremendously, and with that has provided greater opportunities for the con artist.
And the con artist is like any other person, looking for opportunities in life, and they're just finding them out there.
Everywhere.
I do want to mention that we have some websites to show you, and they are the Better Business Bureau, the United States Postal Service, the Better Business Bureau, and AARP. If you go to the Better Business Bureau, on the right side it'll say Business and Identity Theft. You just click it and it'll give you some information. If you go to the Postal Service or AARP, there's a search, put identity. Tons of information will come up. And I'm told that the FTC has an excellent ID theft site. You each get 3 words. I want 3 magic words, like eat dirt. But you say, it could be buy a shredder.
I would tell people to protect your information in every way you can think of.
And make copies of all your stuff so you can
protect
report
your
it.
information.
Don't be gulled. You take a phone call, make sure that you know who's calling in. Volunteer to call them back or do whatever you need to, but be careful with
If you
that.
don't know them, you don't have to
You
be
don't know
friends
'em.
with them, right? And I think some of our older people are looking for friends.
I think a lot
and
of our younger
conversation.
people too.
That's true. I'll talk to anybody. Well, I'm so young. Ava John.
Never give information to anyone unless you initiate the contact.
I learned that. And Marcia?
Basically, know who you're dealing with, and that's really critical.
It's hard to do on the internet these days.
It is. Something flashy isn't always reliable.
Well, I sure want to thank you for coming. If nothing else, we have not solved the problem, but it's not going to be solved, and you are the most important part of solving the problem for yourself. I want to thank Eva John, Marcia, Mike, and Pam for taking the time to be with us today. And remember, you can go to unotv.unomaha.edu and see this show, refer it to a friend, or any other show. Come back next week for Consider This.